All right, this is November the 1st, 2022, and I have a question from Southern California. If you have any questions for me, please do send them to aaron@aaronbudgeon.net. That's the email that I'm using in order to receive and respond to the questions through video. So if you have one, do send it to me. All right, now in this question, this is about Genesis chapter 6, verse 4 especially, with regards to the sons of God, that there is the appearance that there were angels that were engaging in an intimate way with some of the ladies here on earth, and that there were children that were born as a result. And so the question is what is this about? Was this really happening? And I have found that a lot of people have tried pretty hard to formulate opinions about this. Others have just had conversation about this in an endless way and never coming to any kind of conclusion. I'm not going to talk about the different views that people have in this particular question. I'm just going to get right to the point and tell you what I think, okay, what I see whenever I read Genesis chapter 6. All right, now let me read it in context. Beginning in verse 1, Genesis chapter 6, verse 1, it says, "Now it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. So the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping things, and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord." All right, so this is the situation. The situation is that the behavior of people got to be so bad. I mean, it's just so awful, okay, that God felt sorry, he felt bad, he felt maybe ashamed that he created men to begin with. He really saw that it was his fault in this sense. Not completely, but in this simple way, he saw, you know what? The reason why men, these people, are able to engage in all of this evil, the reason why, I'm going to take the position that it's because I created them, I will assume responsibility for this part of what's going on. But don't worry, I'll fix it. Okay? That's what he says. He says, I feel so ashamed. I feel like, such a failure. But don't worry, I'll fix it. I will kill you all. Right? I will. And not just you, but I'm going to kill all the animals. I'm even going to kill the bugs. I mean, every living thing is going to die. That's how I will solve this problem that I recognize I am partially responsible for. Don't worry, I will fix it. All right. That's what he says. But he saw Noah and he thought, okay, all right, the rest of you have got 120 years before I wipe you out, which is about how it worked out. That's what he said. You guys got 120 years. It was about that long. And then the flood came, and that was it. And he wiped out everybody. How bad was it? I mean, it was really bad. Now, there are examples in the scriptures, and I've pointed several of them out in the past. There are examples where there are descriptions of what people think is taking place, but it isn't really what's happening. We have the testimony in the scriptures here and there. There's just a few examples that I've pointed out in the past where what you have is you have the description of the perception of the people. But that didn't mean that that was the way it really was. It was just the way that they thought things were. And this to me is just another example of this. I personally think that this is an example of what people thought, of the way that people perceived things, that there was a belief that there were these angelic beings that engaged, or these demonic beings that engaged with these ladies, and that there were these children that were born that were giants. Now listen, there could very well have been these giants, and they could have been men of great renown with unusual strength. That I'm not going to argue with, because I am confident that could easily happen, especially with the influence of some demonic spirits. There are some demonic spirits, from what I understand, there are some who do have the ability to have that kind of direct influence on our physiology, that could engage in a harmonious way, to some degree with another person, so that they would give them the appearance that they have this tremendous strength, these tremendous abilities, maybe even increase in size. In terms of how they're born, there could be some influence on the genetic structure of people. I do have the opinion. It's just a belief, because there is no way to say precisely and to prove anything with regards to this. If you haven't noticed that yet, you should notice that, because after all the discussions that people have had for hundreds and hundreds of years over this topic, no one seems to have come to a conclusion that satisfies many people. All right, so there's only the opinions that we can have. So when I look at this is what I see. All right, I see the perspective of the people at this time, that they believed this kind of stuff was going on. Could there have been demonic influence in order to, for people to be born and be giants and stuff? I have the conviction that could take place, and that great strength and great renowned stuff could take place. I do have the conviction that with the influence of demonic powers, some of them, that this could very well occur. And I would expect those kinds of things to be going on if things are so bad that God decides that he's going to just kill all life on earth, on the planet. All right? Then I would expect that some of this would be going on. Okay? All right, now there's something else I would like to add to this, and that is with regards to the topic of Satanism and satanic rituals. All right. Now, I am not going to give a well-described explanation. I'm just going to give a general, in the direction kind of explanation. All right, because I don't want to talk too much about this particular topic. But I'll say a little bit, because in this case, I think it is relevant with Genesis chapter 6. All right, now I don't want to encourage anyone to pursue a knowledge of satanic rituals. I don't want to encourage that. I don't think it's a good idea. I think that you could do better things with your time. Okay? I don't have a real interest in satanic rituals or the kinds of things that those people have been involved in ever since probably Genesis chapter 6, and before. I don't find that appealing. I don't enjoy having a knowledge of these things. But it turns out that I do have some knowledge about these things, and I'll tell you how it happened. Okay, there's two sources that I have with regards to this. The first source is from a satanic priest who I was involved in the conversion of when I was young in the faith. It just turned out that there was a situation where God sent me to go speak with a satanic priest a few times. All right, and after a few times, and us having some good conversations, the circumstances were right, and he was willing to surrender to God and believe the gospel and embrace Jesus as his Messiah and King, and to change sides, And this was not a small thing. There's a lot to say about what happened there. I spoke about this a little bit in the recent version I think I did on spiritual warfare. I think I might have snuck that in there just a little bit. The whole story I probably will never tell, but it was an educational experience to go through his discipleship. All right, and what we did was we traded. All right, it was a trade. It was an exchange that when we would get together, I would spend some time talking with him about the things that I knew and that I understood, and he would spend some time talking with me about the things that he knew and that he understood. A lot of things that he, of course, is now rejecting, and it was part of him unwinding and decompressing and just trying to get a lot of stuff out of his system. And so I learned a lot about demonology and a lot about Satanism just because I spent a lot of time with somebody who was very much involved, and I was discipling him and helping him navigate through this change of going from that to living a life in Christ Jesus. All right. The second source was because it turned out that I think it was shortly after that. I can't remember if it was before or after, but it was within the same few years. I was involved in helping some folks, different people, who were victims of satanic ritual abuse. All right, and both guys and girls. And several of them, and it was just a matter of circumstance of life. I didn't look for these opportunities. I didn't look for these people. They just showed up, in effect. It just happened. Well, a few of these people, they had journals that they wrote out as part of their trying to unwind and heal from the experiences that they had. Part of that was they felt that if they recorded these things, then they could allow them to kind of be forgotten. It was okay to no longer remember these things because they were written down. They were put somewhere else. It was a way of taking them. They're trying to take these things out of their minds and put them in another location so they can separate themselves a little bit from the memories that they were struggling with and that they were dealing with. All right, and so writing journals is a common way that people like this work through some of these complex issues. Well, I've read through journals. I have. I've read through their journals and studied them carefully as they asked me to help them work through some of these issues and try to figure out, well, how do they embrace Jesus in the context of this and in the context of that, and with some of these things that happened. All right, and a lot of these things were in the category. All right, I'll just tell you, yes, the things that I learned back in those days, and it's been a long time since I've been exposed to this. I'm thankful. I'm not interested. I don't want to go look for these things. I'd rather not. If God wants me to be involved in these things, He can do something about it. But I'm not going to go look for it. I'm not going to go pursue this. But I can say with confidence that of the things that I learned from those days, I can understand why God would decide, I think we'll just flood the earth. We'll just kill everybody, and the cows, and the pigs, and the birds, even the insects, everything's going to just die. I can understand what would probably inspire him to feel that way after looking at these things and understanding these things. All right, now I said all of that in order to say this, that what I read here in Genesis chapter 6, it just so happens to be very close to descriptions that I have seen of many kinds of satanic rituals where people had the belief, the perception that these things were taking place, but it wasn't really happening in the way that they thought it was. Okay? And so from that kind of an understanding that I have, I will say, no, these were not children who had some kind of merged genetics between demonic beings and human beings. That was just a belief that people had. Children were born, but it was between two humans. There wasn't really a demonic spirit or some son of God in that kind of a context that was that was bringing these people about, to be giants and stuff, like many people are kind of reading off of the surface. Okay, I will say that this is a description of a satanic ritual that I would rather not explain the details of, and that this is the perception that the people had, but it wasn't really what was actually taking place. Okay, so that's the best answer that I can give, that I can think of, concerning this Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, sons of God with the daughters of men. And of course, they're beautiful, yes, absolutely. And they were beautiful, yes. So of course, there would be some kind of appeal. But no, that's not really what, I don't think that's really what was happening. Okay, so I will stop there, and you ask the Lord to maybe give you some additional insights if you would really like to know. All right, I hope that helps. Thanks.